Good morning. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Find out how two party list nominees were able to defy odds and come out as surprise big winners. Here at the forefront. Human rights lawyer Chel Diokno is joining the 20th Congress after Akbayan topped the party list race in the midterm election. Even before he formally takes a seat in the House of Representatives, he was already named to the prosecution team in the impeachment case against VP Sara Duterte. With his decades of legal experience, will Attorney Chel help tip the balance toward accountability and reform? We have with us this morning Representative-elect of Akbayan Partylist, Attorney Chel Diokno. Good morning and congratulations, Congressman Chel.
Well, thank you, Attorney Karen, and thank you for having me in your program.
Let's start first with your win. Did you expect Akbayan to top the party list race?
No, not at all. We were so surprised at the result. Based on the surveys, kasi we were just like in the middle, and we never expected that we would top the party list race.
With your campaign strategy, there were some who said that Akbayan has a legal machine, a big campaign machinery. Is that true? Do you think that's something that accounted for your big win?
Well, Akbayan is really based on the mass movement of people and people's organizations. So when you say machinery, I don't think it's the same as, let's say, the machinery of a traditional political party or party list. And over the years, I think we have managed to keep that, but it's only recently, I think, that we have been able to really get, really infuse more blood into the organization.
What is Akbayan all about as a party list? What do you represent?
Well, Akbayan is a multi-sectoral party list. So we want to take care of all the different sectors in our society, especially those in the margins. So we have programs for every sector, for our workers, for our fisher folk, our farmers, the women's rights, LGBTQ community, and among others. Also our katutubo, mga indigenous peoples natin.
Ilang years na po bang in existence ang Akbayan Party List?
Oh, one of the origs ang Akbayan. We started in 1997.
Really? When the
Yes.
party list system started?
So
because the first time, 1998, right?
I think
when they
so, yeah.
first ran the party list in the election. So, nasa first pala kayo talaga.
Yes.
Original. But, when you look at the votes, with over 2.7 million votes that Akbayan was able to garner, if you think about it, since you represent many sectors, if you split your party list into, for example, 3 party list groups, you could have still won with that 2.7 million and technically gotten about 8 seats in Congress. What is your comment on that?
Well, we are very happy with the 3 seats that we have in this 20th Congress, and I think that that thought has never really occurred to Akbayan to divide the organization into different groups. We've always been a multi-sectoral party, and I think that's also what gives us such a rich, a lot of energy and a lot of purpose in terms of our political agenda.
Yeah. So what do you think contributed to the win? You've been in existence for around 27 years now, but this is the first time that nag-top yung Akbayan.
Yes.
Wow.
The first
So
time.
what do you
If
think
I remember
accounted
right,
for that? Do you think it's so you said kanina, it's not really having a political machinery. So do you think it's the new composition of votes with the Gen Zs and millennials, or is it your messaging, social media? What do you think accounted for this big?
I think it's a combination. One factor is the changing demographic of our voters. Because last elections in 2022, there were only about 11% were from the Gen Zs. But this election, the Gen Zs were over 20%. So that's a big jump from roughly 5 or 6 million voters to times 2 or times 3. But aside from that, I really have to say that we really had message discipline in terms of the campaign. Sometimes that's one of the challenges in a campaign, to maintain the messaging.
What was your message? during the campaign?
I think it's all captured in our tagline, pagmahal mo, akbayan mo. And that really was what we centered on throughout the campaign. That matagal nang inaakbayan ng akbayan ang sambayan ng Pilipino at gusto din namin ituloy yun, paglilingkod sa bayan.
What would you say was the major accomplishments of Akbayan in the past?
Oh, we have a very good legislative track record. We have, for example, passed the expanded quality medicines law, the SK reform law, the Solo Parents Act, the Safe Spaces law, among many
Safe
others.
Spaces,
Yes.
you were part of that. Okay, so you have really a track record of legislation that's been very helpful to people. Based on your votes, you got 770,000 votes in NCR, which was the number one, most votes in that region. Region 4A, over 694,000 votes. Region 3, 500,000 plus. Were these the regions that you concentrated on from a campaign strategy?
We did spend time in those regions, but we ourselves are very surprised that we got that many votes. We would have been, I think, happy. Our targets were much lower than the actual result. But, we also went around because it's really a national campaign, but it's impossible to hit every place. So we chose the areas where we felt we could get more votes.
Would you
and
say
those were parts of the
that, because it's heavy on Luzon, but Visayas, Mindanao, were you able to reach that given your campaign funds? How much funds did you have to be able to reach up to Mindanao?
Nahihirapan kami. Kasi the farther you go, in a way, the more expensive it is.
Yes.
And that really was one of the factors in terms of our choosing which areas we wanted to focus on.
Is that something you want to change in the future elections? Reach the Visayas and Mindanao voters
Oh,
more?
definitely.
Well, you personally ran for Senate twice before, but didn't make it. With this showing of support for Akbayan, would you consider going to Senate in the future?
Well, I'm open to it, but I really can't. My focus now is really on serving in the House of Representatives. And this is a new journey in my life, so there's so much to do in terms of the preparations before I assume office.
What was the experience like, comparing it to running for Senate and running for party list? But it's both national, no? But how would you compare the two experiences?
Well, they're both very hectic, but I think a Senate run is much more, mas 24/7 kasi ang kampanya sa Senate. In the party list, also because there are other nominees, we were able to divide the work. And I had more opportunity to rest than in the Senate campaign.
You were recently named as part of the prosecution team against Vice President Sara Duterte. How were you selected? Did someone personally call you to invite you?
Yes, there were some feelers I received, and then later on, I got a call from Speaker Romualdez.
So the same with Senator Laila.
Yes.
There were some that say that the reason for also this big support for Akbayan was for some of the voters that were looking for an alternative na hindi kasama dun sa political rift between the Dutertes versus the Marcoses, hindi kasama dun sa away ng dalawang factions. But with you joining the prosecution team, do you think that refutes that message na bigla ka ngayon masasama sa bangayan between these two political factions?
Well, Akbayan was the first to endorse the first impeachment complaint. And the reason is because we have been really, asking for accountability. We are for the truth, for justice, and accountability. And that's still what pushes us in terms of participating in the impeachment. The impeachment is the biggest trial you'll ever encounter in our country. And the Philippines and the whole world will be watching. It's a great opportunity as well to educate the people about how court proceedings take place and what evidence is and how judges should decide the case.
In a recent interview, Vice President Sara Duterte said that she wasn't surprised that you and Senator Laila, well now, Congresswoman Laila de Lima, joined the prosecution team because she said anti-Duterte na naman sila since birth. Do you have any bad blood between you and the Dutertes?
Perhaps it's the other way around. Perhaps it's them who have bad blood against me. I have never had, it's never been personal for me. It's always been issue-oriented. In fact, as I recall, when the former president went on a tirade in one of his late-night talks on TV and singled me out, he was very personal about it. He didn't talk about my stance, but he talked about my teeth and everything else. Pero para sa akin, that's up to him. I'm not going to respond in kind. And I've always based my statements and my positions on what I believe is right on every issue. And I will never change that.
And you're not worried that being part of the prosecution team will distract you from the legislation that you would want to push for as a representative of Akbayan?
Well, given my background as a trial lawyer, I've been going to court for over 30 years. Preparing for an impeachment is just like preparing for a court case. And of course, that requires time. But at the same time, I think I have enough time management skills to do that as well as my legislative work.
You were also previously part of the impeachment against former President Joseph Estrada. What was that experience like, and how would you compare that with now preparing for your impeachment trial against Vice President Sara Duterte?
It was a very exciting experience. I was head of one of the teams as private prosecutor at that time. Unfortunately, we never got to present our evidence because on the day that we were supposed to begin, the prosecution walked out, if you recall. So in terms of appearing in an impeachment trial, this will be the first time. But I'm looking forward to it because I think that impeachment has an educative function as well for our people. Our people feel that the law is so far away from them that they really don't know the nuances of litigation. And I hope that we can do that kind of function as well.
What about those who say that an impeachment is divisive and distracts the country from the issues that we need to address, like inflation and poverty?
We still need to address those issues, and that will be addressed by the legislative part of being a congressional representative. In fact, that is something that has really concerned Akbayan. Yung sobrang pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin, our problems are crisis in education, unemployment, and the issues in the West Philippine Sea. We should never forget those issues, among others.
And you're not worried that this would take a lot of time from addressing those problems, like when Congress is busy with an impeachment and Senate is sitting as an impeachment court?
From what I gather, I don't think the process will take that long. I don't think that it will eat up much time in terms of the sessions that we'll see happening. But of course, that will depend on the rules of impeachment and how the Senate will manage the case.
And do you think that this might potentially lead to a blowback in 2028? That's 3 years from now. But with politics, we can see that usually the events that lead up to it will have an effect. And I think in this case, we saw some effects on the 2025 election. You're not worried about any blowback?
It's very hard to predict what happens in an impeachment case. During the era of impeachment, I don't think no one knew what really was going to be the outcome of that. And the same applies, I believe, to any impeachment trial.
You have a son that also recently made it as a counselor. Is your son's first time to be joining politics as well?
Yes.
What made him decide to join politics?
I really don't know, actually. I think that when we spoke, what I can say is that he really wants to serve. And that to me is something that, I really, talagang tumaba rin ang puso ko when he told me that. I never expected that any of my children would have wanted to run for office. And this is quite an experience for him as well.
Ano pong advice binigay niyo sa kanya? This is Abe Diokno?
Yes.
Yes. What advice did you give him?
I told him, well, all I told him is that he must uphold the Diokno tradition. We haven't had a Diokno in public office for more than 40 years. My father was a senator in the 1960s up to the early 70s. Since that time, no one in our immediate family has been in office. So this is, we want to continue the tradition of public service that the family has done for a long time.
Are you already considering having him join Akbayan in the future?
Oh, that's his choice, not mine. And I think it's also important to emphasize that I believe I would like to call our family a family of public servants, in contrast to families that hoard power over hundreds of years. We have had families in our country that have occupied the same position since the 1900s.
Yeah.
And that we continue to fight for better accountability and for more merit-based public servants.
Yeah.
And
Jose,
that's something I will continue to fight for.
Jose W. Diokno was known as one of the greatest senators at the time, at the era where Senate or politicians were known to be statesmen. What were the biggest accomplishments of Jose Diokno?
He passed a lot of laws that are still in place now, including economic laws, foreign investments, among others. He was also really, I think, fundamental in terms of making human rights a household term. One of the first to really fight for human rights in a time when human rights were, anathema to the government. And that is something that I really look up to. In fact, he's my role model and my inspiration for...
That's why you were inspired to go into politics.
Well, first to become a human rights lawyer and then later on to decide to run for public office.
Is that something that he encouraged you to do?
Never. No,
Ay,
never.
Hindi.
Never.
Did he encourage you to be a lawyer?
No, not at all.
Hindi. He's not that type of dad.
No.
Like the dictator. It was your own decision based on being inspired by your dad.
Yes, and as young as 13 years old, I really wanted to be like him, to the point where when I would see him dressing for court, I would ask him, "Can I go with you?" And he never said no, and I was so fascinated by court proceedings. Siguro yun ang advantage ko in a way sa ibang lawyers because maliit pa lang ako, sanay na ako sa court, and I got to watch some of the best trial lawyers in our country. These were lawyers, yung talagang tinatawag natin, Attorney Karen, na mga abogado de campanilla.
Yes, yeah. And in the past, you were also cum laude, is that correct? You graduated cum laude, or is it magna cum laude?
Yes, from Northern Illinois University.
What learnings did you get from studying abroad that you were able to bring back to the Philippines?
Yeah, it was really very enriching for me because we are a civil law tradition, while in the States they have a common law tradition.
Yeah.
And even the way law is taught is different. I got to study law at the University of the Philippines before I went to the States. So I had an experience of legal education here and then legal education in the US. And in the US, they really emphasized analysis, critical thinking, and the ability to see legal issues when you have a jumble of facts, which is in reality what lawyers have to do. I am so happy that I got that kind of preparation.
How would you elevate the public perception of Congress by being there? In recent years, people have criticized Congress or even the political landscape in the Philippines as deteriorating, and the quality of the people there, they've said na wala ibang-iba na. Ngayon, you have this background that I would say is very competent for a congressman. You have a law degree and you've even studied abroad, but you really have this track record of being a human rights lawyer. How will you change the status of Congress?
Well, first, I think it's in terms of the quality of legislation that we can draft. As a practicing lawyer, you have an opportunity to see where the gaps are in existing laws, and you have an opportunity to see where legislation is needed. As a human rights lawyer, the same thing. You work with communities, and again, you see how the law impacts or doesn't impact the lives of ordinary people. And that's really what I want to bring to Congress.
Yeah.
Bringing the Akbayan brand of service, where we want to, yung kapakanan ng ordinaryong mamamayan, yun talagang mahalaga sa amin.
What are your top 3 legislative priorities?
Well, of course, number 1 is addressing the staggering inflation that we continue to suffer from.
But what type of legislation will you introduce to address inflation?
First of all, we have the Baon Bill that is to help our beneficiaries of 4Ps who want to continue their education. Even if it's free, wala silang pambaon, wala silang pamasahe, wala silang pambili ng school supplies and books. And we want to address that gap in the law. It will be a counterpart basically to the 4Ps law, where they will be given a monthly allowance which they can use to address that issue, to ensure that despite the rising prices, they'll be able to continue their education. We also have we have pushing for the 200 peso minimum wage legislation, which we hope will pass in the 20th Congress, to help our workers also deal with the rising prices. So those are some of the legislation that we want to push.
Do you have any ideas on how to also improve it from the side of production to lower the cost of production of goods and services? Because the other side of the argument is if you just raise the wages without really addressing some of the cost drivers, then it's also an added burden to employers and those doing business, especially small businesses, so that it might be difficult to, pump prime the economy.
Yes, I believe that we have hand in hand to support our MSMEs because they are a big part of our economy. And minsan nakakalimutan sila, especially when we know that they are facing problems in terms of liquidity and keeping their operations going. So we must find ways to address that as well.
With the budget in 2025, that was highly controversial, and there's still a pending case in the Supreme Court questioning it. What would you propose in terms of improving the checks and balances when it comes to public funds, but also when it comes to, I think, just the separation of the legislative and the executive?
Well, I think there has to be more transparency because what we saw in this budget for 2025 was that what was proposed by the executive department and what was then passed by the House of Representatives and the Senate is not what came out after the BICAM. And I think we have to find ways to ensure that the will of the people is what is the driving force behind any budget. We also must address the mandate of the Constitution as well as the recommendations of the United Nations that we increase the budget of the education to 6% of the gross domestic product. Right now, it's only at about maybe 3.7 or less than 4%. So sana magawa din natin yan.
And are you also against pork barrel?
Well, what Akbayan has always said is we are after accountability in all manner of our performance, and that includes the use of funds. So we want to make sure that funds go to where they're supposed to go and not to where they're not supposed to go.
So lalabanan niyo yung mga pork barrel, for example, in the budget?
Yung issue halimbawa ng confidential funds, I mean, we've been very vocal about that there really must be more, there has to be legislation that will regulate the use of that. In the first place, when you speak of confidential and intelligence funds, what agencies should be entitled to have that? Dapat meron tayong ground rules dyan. And then, paano ang reporting niyan? Para ma-ensure natin na baka naman ginagatasan lang nila yung pera ng bayan. So dapat meron talaga.
So is that something you'll push for in terms of legislation?
I think that's important, yes.
Thank you so much, Congressman Chel Diokno. We'll have more of you later. But up next, we'll have the representative-elect of Kamanggagawa Partylist, whom you first got to know here at the forefront, when we return after a short break. Political vlogger, workers' rights activist Eli San Fernando made his first media interview here at BNC. And he just won a seat in Congress under Kamanggagawa Partylist. He gained national attention through bold campaigns and viral advocacy, including a pledge to live on minimum wage while in office. Will his promises to bring real change move Congress to make substantial reforms to Filipino workers? Joining us this morning is the representative-elect of Kamanggagawa Partylist, Eli San Fernando. Congratulations, Congressman Eli.
Thank you.
Di ba? Sarap pakinggan.
Thank you, Atty. Karen. Eli lang po. Ayoko magpatawag ng congressman.
But you know, you're gonna change that image
Yes,
na
yes.
pag sinabing congressman ay, di ba yung iba sinasabi?
Respectable.
Oo, so magiging respectable,
Yeah.
di ba? So, let's talk about your party list. So, Kamanggagawa Partylist is only 3 years old.
Yes.
Nagulat ka ba na nag-rank kayo number 29?
Yeah, actually, Atty. Karen, sa mga previous surveys, hindi kami lumalapag doon sa winning circle. In fact, nandun kami sa top 100.
Oh my God.
Top 80 to top 100 party list. So, kinakabahan yung buong campaign team. Pero nagkaroon ng ginhawa nung few weeks before the elections, bigla kaming lumapag sa top 29 to top 30. So, nag-match naman so far doon sa resulta.
Gano'ng
ng
kalaki
eleksyon.
yung campaign team ninyo?
Maliit lang, Atty. Karen, kasi puro mga volunteers to eh. Mga manggagawa, mga unionista, mga kabataan, yung nagpapatakbo ng campaign team.
When you say maliit, like what? 50?
Less than 20.
Oh my goodness, maliit nga talaga
Yes.
for a national campaign.
Yes,
ah.
Atty. Karen.
And I remember the first times that we've interviewed you, sabi mo nga yung ikot ninyo, wala kayong funding. So
Yes.
talagang kung saan lang kayo makapunta or kung merong susuporta,
Yes.
pupuntahan nyo. So paano nyo na-run yung campaign nyo? Was it heavy on social media or nakapag-ikot ba kayo in person?
First of all, Atty. Karen, salamat din sa Bilyonaryo kasi ito ata ang una namin na media appearance. So nakatulong din yan. Pero ang isa sa pinakamalaking nakatulong sa amin yung social media. Hindi namin sinasabi na social media lang ang nagpanalo, pero malaking factor ang paggamit ng social media sa pagkapanalo ng kamanggagawa. Pero sinabayan din namin yan ng pagkilo sa ground. So kinausap namin yung mga union, mga workers associations, mga communities, at in-encourage sila na if you believe in kamanggagawa, kampanya nyo. Sabihin nyo sa mga KKK ang tawag namin dun eh. Kamag-anak, katrabaho, kapamilya. Hindi sapat kasi na naniniwala lang kayo online. Hindi sapat yung viral online eh. Kailangan sabayan niya ng pagkilo sa ground. At tingin ko yun yung naging malaking factor sa pagkapanalo, Atty. Karen, ng kamanggagawa. Kasi merong malakas na social media presence at sinabayan ng pagkilo sa baba. Totoo, very limited yung aming house-to-house tsaka mga materials. Kasi wala ngang pondo eh. Ang bahagan nga lang yung Kamanggagawa Partylist. Pero nagugulat kami, Atty. Karen, kasi maraming mga volunteers at supporters na nagpo-produce ng kanilang sariling materials. Say for example,
grassroots support.
yes, say for example, Atty. Karen, hindi kami lumapag at hindi kami bumabad sa Bicol region. Pero Bicol region is one of the top provinces, regions na nag-deliver sa Kamanggagawa. So nagulat kami, ibig sabihin, tumagos yung mensahe ng Kamanggagawa sa mga Bicolano. And nakikita namin, sila mismo nagpo-produce ng kanilang mga materials. Meron kami nakita sa Mindanao, gumawa pa ng tarpaulin sa karton. Actually, sinulat nila, vote for Kamanggagawa Partylist.
Nakaka-touch naman yan.
Exactly, Atty. Karen. Kaya itong mga pinagsama-samang mga bagay na to online, pagkilo sa ground, yung mga volunteers, yung mga support, ito yung nagpanalo sa Kamanggagawa. Kaya lagi namin binabanggit, ang Kamanggagawa Partylist, ipinanalo ito ng mga manggagawa at ordinaryong Pilipino. And I'm really proud to say that. Ako, actually, nung proclamation, Atty. Karen, malalaking mga tao yun nandun eh. Parang ako lang yung, there's a new kid in town na wala akong kakilala doon. So sabi ko, nung nag-live ako, mga boss, eto na. Ito na yung representative na idinala nyo sa proclamation sa Kongreso. So samahan nyo ako hanggang dulo dahil tayo nagpanalo nito.
Nakakatuwa naman. I'm really happy to hear your story because yan yung, I think, totoong intent nung drafters ng Constitution when they put in the party list system, yung mga marginalized, underrepresented sectors na walang political dynasty, walang political machinery, yung maboboto at makakapasok sa Kongreso. So, ngayon na mataas kayo, naka-number 29 kayo, paano mo aabutin yung mga urban poor communities sa yung platform mo? Paano mo papaabutin sa kanila yung mga napangako mong reforms?
Ang kagandahan sa Kamanggagawa, Atty. Karen, we've been working with urban poor communities for quite some time na. May eleksyon o wala, kasama namin yung mga maralitang tagalungsod. So, tuloy-tuloy.
In what way? Paano mo nagagawa yan?
Usapin sa housing, may mga madidemolish. Isa sa mga kampanya rin ng Kamanggagawa, hindi kami pumapayag sa demolition kung walang maayos at sapat na relokasyon.
Yeah. And that's part of the regulations talaga sa Pilipinas. So dati pa ba, meron na kayong group na Kamanggagawa na yung pangalan?
Kasi ang bumubuo sa Kamanggagawa, mga union, mga homeowners associations. So nakakatulong kami sa pag-bridge nitong mga organisasyon, mga homeowners, sa mga ahensya ng gobyerno para sa dialogo. Pero isa rin siyempre sa ginagawa namin, pag hindi pinapakinggan ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno, definitely nag-iingay kami para mapakinggan itong mga hinaing ng mga kababayan natin, lalong-lalo na yung mga urban poor communities. So tuloy-tuloy naman yan, Atty. Karen, and with us gaining a seat in Congress, tingin ko napakalaking tulong yan sa mga urban poor communities natin.
What adjustments will you make? Because yung mga dialogues that used to work when you were an organization can now change because iba na expectations. When you're in Congress, primarily you're supposed to be there for legislation. Ano yung babaguhin mo in the way you push for your advocacies?
Isa sa mga function, Atty. Karen, ng Congress, yung oversight function niya. So pwede ipatawag itong mga ahensya ng gobyerno. Especially, lalo na kapag nagba-budget deliberation, patawag natin na about DSUD. Bakit hindi ginagawa ng DSUD yung trabaho nila? Bakit hindi ginagawa ng NHA at iba pang ahensya ng gobyerno mga trabaho nila? Wala kasing nagsasalita, Atty. Karen eh. Pagdating sa mga committee hearings, actually wala nga mga hearings na pinapatawag eh. So we can utilize the power of Congress to compel these agencies para tumugon dun sa pangangailangan ng mga tao. At yun yung talagang i-utilize ng Kamanggagawa. Sabi ko nga sa lahat na nakakausap, malaking hamon to, malaking laban to. Kasi marami tayong makakabangga and we are really serious about that, Atty. Karen. Babanggain namin yung mga dapat banggain and we're going to use the power of Congress to its full extent para mapakinabangan ng mga mamamayan natin.
Anong type of legislation ang naiisip mo na kailangan pa?
Primarily, Atty. Karen, kasi ang pinangako ng Kamanggagawa, mabuwag yung provincial rate na tinatawag eh. So we will repeal RA 6727, which is the Wage Rationalization Act of 1989. Yan muna.
And you're not worried that it will be an unnecessary burden for provinces na mas mababa ang yung quality, I mean, yung, in terms of the standard of living, na mas mababa naman talaga yung mga presyo doon. So that, baka naman yung mga employers hindi ma-afford.
That's a valid concern, Atty. Karen. So doon sa mga lugar na talagang hindi pa ganun ka-competitive o hindi pa ganun ka-develop, dyan papasok yung role ng national government. The national government has its resources, bilyong-bilyong pondo na pupunta kung saan-saan. Ayuda, mga walang kakwenta-kwentang proyekto. So dapat itong mga resources ng gobyerno, ilagak ng gobyerno dito sa mga lugar, sa mga probinsya, para tunay na ma-develop, makapaglikha ng oportunidad, makapaglikha ng trabaho, magkaroon ng mga industriya. Doon naman sa mga micro, small, medium enterprises, pwedeng tulungan niya ng gobyerno eh. Magkaroon ng mas maraming incentive sa kanila. Baliktad kasi ang paradigm ng gobyerno, yung mga malalaki, mas pinapalaki pa. Yung mga maliliit, which is 90%, more than 90% of our local businesses, halos walang incentive. Kaya namamatay, nawawala doon sa merkado. So what we are trying to propose is, dapat suportahan to ng gobyerno, lumikha ng trabaho ng mga industriya, at may resources ang gobyerno para
You
gawin
mean to tell me, subsidize yung minimum wage? Let's say, pag tinanggal yung provincial rate, dapat i-subsidize ng government yung sweldo sa mga probinsya na hindi kasing yaman ng Metro Manila, for example.
Atty. Karen. Pero hindi to dole out. Nagawa na natin to noong 2020. Ang tawag dyan, Small Business Wage Subsidy. The government paid the salaries of micro, small, medium enterprises workers. So dito sa pinopropose namin, kung hindi kakayanin ng mga maliit at maliitan ng mga negosyo, pwedeng counterpart ba ng gobyerno na ano ba yung pwedeng ilagak ng gobyerno na subsidy for these micro, small, medium enterprises para makasabay itong mga negosyo na ito.
Okay, interesting. Sige, bigyan mo kami ng update sa
Yeah, yes.
umuusad na yung bill na gagawin ninyo. Yung dati sinabi mo na ikaw ang unang kongresista na mabubuhay lang sa minimum wage. Paano mo gagawin yon considering I think nasa 6 figures na ngayon
Yes.
yung salary ng mga nasa Congress and that's not even counting yung mga allowances and other benefits that they get.
Seryoso ako dyan, Atty. Karen, nung dineklara ko, I will be the first congressman na tatanggap ng minimum wage. Sahod ng congressman ngayon nasa 290 to 300,000 pesos. In fact, kausap ko na yung mga presidente ng union na ang unang sahod at yung mga magiging susunod na sahod ay idodonate doon sa mga manggagawa. Saan ba mapupunta yung sahod ko? Maraming kaso ang mga manggagawa, Atty. Karen. Kalimitan ng mga manggagawa, walang pambayad ng lawyer, walang pamasahe papunta ng NLRC, ng DOLE. So itong sahod ko, ito yung gamitin nila para may pamasahe, may pangkuha ng mga lawyer. Matiyak nila na yung mga kaso nila ay umuusad without having to think, ano ba itong, may pamasahe ba ako, may pampunta ba ako ng DOLE, ng NLRC. Second, gagamitin din namin yung sahod ko as congressman, magiging congressman, para doon sa organizing also ng mga union. Kasi Atty. Karen, napakahirap mag-organize ng union. Isa rin yan sa ipaglalaban ng Kamanggagawa Partylist. Siyempre, full-time advocacy yan yung pag-organize ng union. May pamilya rin yung mga manggagawa, yung mga unionista. Paano ma-provide yung pangangailangan, mga basic na pangangailangan ng mga manggagawa. So doon mapupunta yung sahod ko. At pagpapakita rin to ng commitment, Atty. Karen, kung hindi seryosohin ng Kongreso yung minimum wage, at least may masasabi yung mga manggagawa at ordinaryong Pilipino na, uy, may congressman na alam yung buhay ng pagiging minimum wage earner. Kasi siya mismo kumukuha ng minimum wage.
Well, I really admire that na ilalagay mo siya sa isang fund that can help the workers talaga dun sa mga common issues that they face. When it comes to your vlogging, dati kumakain ng oras mo yan, are you gonna continue vlogging pa rin?
Yes, Atty. Karen. Isang pamamaraan kasi yung TikTok, Facebook para maka-access sa'yo yung mga tao eh. So magtutuloy-tuloy yan, Atty. Karen. Ang iniisip namin, yung mga updates, tsaka mga live, ano ba ang gusto ng mga mamamayan, mga ordinaryong Pilipino na marinig nila sa loob ng Kongreso, isulong na batas sa loob ng Kongreso. So pamamaraan yan. So tuloy-tuloy yan, Atty. Karen.
Talaga meron tayong bagong Gen Z sa Congress. Yung may kasamang vlogging. And I have a question. Were you ever part of the fake news congressional hearings?
Yes.
Napatawag ka doon?
Yes, Atty. Karen.
So now you're on the other side. Nasa Congress ka na. What would you do differently? Meron ka bang gustong isulong sa Congress to address that issue of fake news? But also, since you saw the other side, na kayo yung tinatanong, kayo yung medyo napapagalitan, alam mo yung plight naman ng mga vloggers. How would you balance that? Ano yung isusulong mo to address fake news but also, understand yung rights din ng mga vloggers?
We've been very consistent sa position namin, Atty. Karen, na protected speech, yung constitutionally protected right to freedom of expression, so dapat maproteksyonan yan. Pero naniniwala rin kami na talagang laganap ang fake news at pagpapalaganap ng misinformation and disinformation. Mas nakakatakot pa nga yung mga deepfakes na tinatawag, yung mga AI, mga bloggers and vloggers na walang muka. Dapat mapanagot yung mga yan eh. Kasi
So yan ang mga hahanapan mo ng solusyon.
Yes, Atty. Karen. May balancing act talaga doon sa pagprotekta ng kalayaan at karapatan sa pag-express ng sarili. Pero dapat din naman na masawata itong mga fake news. At in fact, dapat mapanagot din yung mga platforms na nagiging kasangkapan, instrument sa pagpapalaganap ng mga maling impormasyon. Kasi Atty. Karen, hindi naman dapat nakatuon yung issue doon sa mga kongresista o sa mga politiko, sa mga senador o kung kanino man. Dapat nakatuon to sa mamamayan. Kasi pwedeng mangyari kanino man to eh. Paano kung ang isang ordinaryong Pilipino tinarget ng isang maling impormasyon ng fake news, paano niya mapoproteksyonan yung kanyang sarili?
Yeah. Well, we do have laws on libel and other things. Ikaw ready ka na ba na ikaw naman ngayon ang pwedeng mabash dahil congressman ka na?
Yes, Atty. In fact, ini-encourage ko yan, Atty. Karen na kapag nakikita nila na si Eli ay hindi gumagampan sa kanyang trabaho, sila mismo, yung lahat ng bumoto sa Kamanggagawa, i-bash ako. Buha sila ng content, gawin nila akong katatawanan. I'm not afraid of that, Atty. Karen.
Well, that's good to hear. When you talk about minimum wage, ngayon nasa over 600 pesos na
Yes.
for some areas, ano ba yung naiisip mo na sapat na minimum wage?
NEDA in 2018 said that a family of 5 needs 42,000 pesos a month to live decently. Kahit 645 pesos times 26 mo na lang, wala pa sa kalahati nung 42,000. This was NEDA in 2018. So kung i-divide yan by 26 standard working days, that means 1,600 pesos a day yun. So we support that kung gobyerno na mismo nagsasabi niyan.
Hindi ka ba worried na maraming pushback yan? I mean,
Yes.
for employers, that's really expensive. And are you going to adjust the salaries also for drivers, kasambahays? Ano yung general idea mo?
Actually, Atty. Karen, marami ng debate sa mga labor leaders. In fact, sa Senado nga, pumasa na yung legislated wage increase eh. So ilang serye na ng debate yan with our businessmen, the big business. So pinatunayan natin na posible at kaya na itaas ang sahod. Tapos dito naman sa panawagan na itaas ang sahod, suportado kasi natin lahat, may it be 200, 1,200 or 1,600. Pero primarily, kung hindi nga muna matupad yon ang sinusulong ng kamanggagawa, at least man lang maipantay yung sahod nationwide, magkaroon ng national minimum wage. So po pwedeng step by step naman yan, Atty. Karen. So dito naman sa usapin na magkakaroon ng masamang epekto sa ating ekonomiya, marami na ring datos na nagpapakita na hindi babagsak ang ekonomiya natin if you raise the wages of workers. But that we are willing to discuss and debate about these things with businesses, with our congressmen, para patunayan na tama yung panawagan na itaas ang sahod.
Kanina you mentioned that during the proclamation of the party list winners, ikaw yung new kid on the block. At sabi mo nga, yung iba yung mga big time na nandun. You're going to be among a lot of traditional politicians as well. Marami rin na part of political dynasties. Paano ka makikipagsabayan sa kanila?
Atty. Karen, sabi ko, I'm willing to work with them. Makikipagtrabaho sa kanila, makikipag-usap ako sa kanila, makikipagkaibigan ako sa kanila to explain yung dala ko na legislative agenda. Pero sa punto na hindi nila pakinggan yung bit-bit ng kamanggagawa na legislative agenda, sabi ko nga may pagsusumbungan ako eh. There are 51 million workers in the formal economy alone. And I'm challenging all workers in the formal economy, lahat ng mga kamanggagawa, na kapag hindi pinakinggan sa loob ng Kongreso, yung kamanggagawa, yung mga pinaglalaban ng kamanggagawa, dapat handa tayo ng mga lampag. Isang bahagi yung paggawa ng batas sa loob ng Kongreso. That's true. Gagawin natin yan sa abot ng ating makakaya. Pero dapat maintindihan din ng mga tao na pag hindi umepekto ang gawain sa loob ng Kongreso, dapat handang maningil yung taong bayan. After all,
you'll rally
the
mga manggagawa behind that.
Yes, Atty. Karen.
Salamat, Congressman Eli. We'll have more of Eli San Fernando and Attorney Chel Diokno when At the Forefront returns after a short break. We're back at the forefront with newly elected representatives of Congress, Attorney Chel Diokno and Eli San Fernando. Okay, so now we'll play a game, complete the sentence. I'll alternately ask you to complete the sentence. Okay, so we'll go very quickly. We'll start with Attorney Chel. I will never support a law that
Violates human rights.
talagang true to your roots. Eli, I will never be the kind of congressman who
is unprincipled.
Unprincipled. No, very appropriate. Attorney Chel, I am a human rights lawyer and in Congress,
I will push for accountability, empowerment, and equality.
Eli, accepting minimum wage is my way of showing
Commitment sa pinaglalaban.
Attorney Chel, I want to be known in the 20th Congress as
A servant leader.
Oh, how nice, servant leader. Eli, the fight for wage equality is also the fight for
Justice and dignity.
Tama. Attorney Chel, even if it's unpopular, I will always defend
Human rights.
Eli, I want workers to see me as someone who
is one of their own. Manggagawa rin.
Attorney Chel, the next generation of lawmakers should be
Transformational leaders.
Eli, traditional politicians must?
Must be casted away.
Well, may pag-asa. Diyan na kayong dalawa. Attorney Chel, being on top of the party list groups can only mean that.
A lot of is expected of Akbayan, and we intend to really, express that trust in performing for the people.
Eli, when people trust their votes by giving you their votes, it means...
You have to do your job, Tony Karen.
Okay, very simple. As simple
Yes.
as that. Well, your win, Akbayan topping the list, and Eli talagang strapped for resources, and talagang part ka ng mga manggagawa. I think this kind of refutes the criticisms against the party list system. But would you both acknowledge that for a long time, the party list system, as reported by many, has already been manipulated to favor also political dynasties and business interest groups like contractors, for example? Ano yung comment nyo in terms of needing to change or overhaul the party list system, considering for this election, you both benefited from this party list system? What are your ideas? Kailangan bang palitan or i-overhaul yung system?
I think there are three things that we have to revisit in the party list law. Number one is who can become accredited as a party list organization. Anong criteria yan? Second, who can represent the party list as nominee? Sana manggaling din yan sa same sector. And third, can we find ways to protect the party list system from political dynasties? Tingin ko yun yung tatlong dapat pag-usapan ng Kongreso.
And Eli, do you think this should be done by law?
Yes, Attorney Karen, copy-paste ko na lang yung sinabi ni Attorney Chel. Pero, Attorney Karen, consistent naman kami doon sa binabanggit namin patungkol dito sa party list eh. Talaga na-hijack na yan eh. Talaga nababoy ng todo-todo ang party list system. And kami sa Kamanggagawa, we are even willing to say na if it needs to be abolished in its current form, na talagang puro mga oligarko na nakaupo dyan, why not? Para lang ipakita na totoo tayo doon sa sinasabi natin. Pero tunay na dapat yang ireforma, Attorney Karen.
How do you plan to show in Congress that principled policy still works?
Well, principled politics means that we fight for the people's welfare and we conduct ourselves as true public servants who don't have any self-interest.
We've shown that in Kamanggagawa, Attorney Karen, na kahit walang backing ng mga politiko at ng mga malalaking negosyo, kaya pala na magtagumpay ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino at ng mga manggagawa. At yan din naman yung bibit-bitin natin dun sa loob ng Kongreso. We will maintain our independent line at ang aming isusulong ay ang interes, kagalingan ng mga manggagawa at ordinaryong Pilipino.
Looking back in the 19th Congress, now that you're entering 20th Congress, what were some of the things that you say were big mistakes or things that you would change in the manner that the 20th Congress is conducted? For example, Quadcom hearings. Do you think that should be continued?
Well, for me, it's the budget, issues that revolve around the budget that should be the top priority, and more budget transparency and monitoring as well.
Tingin ko, Attorney Karen, yung hindi natutugunan, yung talagang mga issue ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino at saka mga manggagawa. Ang taas ng taas ng poverty incidence at saka hunger incidence. So dito tayo tumuon sa mga usapin na to kaysa doon sa pagbabangaya ng kung sino mang kampo.
So you'd want to concentrate talaga on the issues that we need to address.
Yes.
Your message to the new generation of lawmakers who share your values and convictions of governance.
Well, let's work together for real change that will uplift the lives of ordinary people. Let's discuss the issues that hit the gut. Pag-usapan natin yung sobrang pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin, ano mang magagawa natin, at dapat i-push natin yan. Yung krisis sa edukasyon, yung problema ng mga manggagawa natin pagdating sa unemployment at contractualization, at ang West Philippine Sea.
Well, what about you, Eli? Anong message mo sa mga colleagues mo na mamimit mo sa 20th Congress?
Trabaho tayo. Gawin natin yung trabaho natin, yung susumpaan nating trabaho para sa ordinaryong Pilipino sa mga manggagawa. Pero wag nating isipin na yung kapangyarihan ay nasa ating mga kamay. Lagi nating tandaan na yung mga nagluklok sa atin sa pwesto ay yung mga mamamayan, yung mga ordinaryong Pilipino at mga manggagawa. At inaasahan nila na magtrabaho tayo at pagginhawain natin ang buhay ng mga mamamayang Pilipino.
And finally, what is your message to the people who voted for you?
First of all, maraming salamat na mula sa puso sa lahat ng mga nangampanya, sa lahat ng mga bumoto, sa mga influencers na nag-support din sa amin, sa mga volunteers. Nako, grabe, ang people-powered talaga itong naging campaign namin. And everyone who really pushed for Akbayan, we never expected this, pero grabe kayo. This win is for you and this is your victory.
Eli?
Mga boss, panalo tayo. Tayo ang nangampanya, tayo ang nagpanalo sa Kamanggagawa, tayo rin ang mag-aani ng ating tagumpay. Pero hindi ko kaya ito mag-isa, mga boss. Gaya sa kung paano nyo ako sinamahan sa laban para ipagtagumpay ang Kamanggagawa, samahan nyo rin po ako sa laban para buwagin na ang walang kwentang provincial rate, patupad ang living wage nationwide at isulong ang interes kagalingan ng mga manggagawa. Thank you, mga boss.
Okay, very inspiring. Thank you so much, Atty. Chel Diokno and Eli San Fernando. Ayan, after nyo manumpa, I will officially call you Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In a time when Congress is often criticized for lacking in principles, two voices rise with clarity and conviction. Atty. Chel Diokno and Eli San Fernando will carry to Congress not just mandates, but missions born out of lived principles and people's struggles. If this is the future of public service, then the future may just stand a chance. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news, always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for insights on issues that matter. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.